Hey, good morning. It's Tim and Kathy with Taste Life with Us.
We're on the Carnival Panorama right now. It's not what this video is about, but we just want to let you know that if we're rocking and rolling, it's because we're on a moving ship. With a tripod sitting on a bed on a laptop. So that's all we got.
Part of the reason why we're doing this particular video is because we are on a cruise on the Panorama heading back home to the United States. Now, we haven't been there for almost 14, 15 months.
Yeah, it's been 15 months since we left our home. We did see some of our kids 13 months ago, briefly on a cruise stop. But yeah, there's a lot of feels involved with going back home. I mean, first of all, what is home?
Right. And that's something that we've talked about a lot with each other, because home, we talk about, well, is it where we're from? Well, no, it's not. That's a building. That's a place. Is it where we are right now? Well, kind of, but not really.
Yeah.
Home is really where your heart is. And for us, that's together, and that's with our families.
Yeah, and our families are in 3 different states. So, yeah, home is a complicated concept as a nomad. So
It really is.
anyways, there's that. That's some feels about going home to who knows what home is. Okay, but we got some other things. We got a few fears about going home, and because a lot of you are thinking of becoming nomads, we want to share them with you just so you get a real idea. We blog daily on the Daily Taste, so you have a lot of info on our authentic nomad life and what it feels like all the time. But we just want to kind of break this out as a separate thing.
Yeah.
Because those of you who are nomads, some of these fears have been validated or maybe even come from talking to you. So we want you to let us know in the comments, what were your fears going home the first time? Because I'm sure it's probably better on subsequent returns.
Well,
I hope so.
Yeah.
This has been emotional.
Yeah, there's, for us too, because we're on this cruise, it's a 25-day cruise, so we got time to think about it. And
yeah, lots of time.
I don't know if that's always the best thing.
Well, and we had a little taste of it in Singapore where we boarded the cruise.
Yeah.
Because our oldest son actually was in Singapore on business.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, which was a super cool thing. Met up with us. We spent a time with him on a couple days. And so, yeah, that was kind of like a strong dose of home before we got home.
Well, and the other thing with Singapore is it's very...
U.S. feeling.
Yeah, U.S. feeling is a good way to put it. And so we kind of got a little bit more of that structure.
Culture shock.
Yeah, the culture shock of it. And lastly, it's expensive.
Just like the U.S. Yeah.
So
that generated some more fear. So we're going to talk about all our fears. We're going to kind of save, I think, the more emotional ones for the end, just in case I lose it. But let's just knock off some of the easy ones.
All right. What's the first fear?
So the first one is what I want to assure you is not really a fear, because I think a lot of you are wondering this. And I know with nomads, a lot of nomads that we've talked to, they're like, I'm more afraid to be in the U.S. than I am to be in the world. And I get it now.
Right.
Like,
yeah, people always say, are you afraid that it's dangerous out there in the real world? Yeah. No, it's really not.
It's not. And almost everyone you meet in a different country says, are you afraid of all the crime in the U.S.? Aren't you more afraid to live there? And that's a complicated question.
Well, I'm going to preface one thing too. The places we've been in the world, we're not talking about cartel regions and other things like that.
Right. And I'm talking about mostly the people that ask these questions are Australians and New Zealanders.
Southeast Asian people, they don't really ask these questions.
They don't really care. But Europeans will ask this question. Aren't you afraid because of all the random shootings and all of those things? Which I think you get numb to it living in the U.S.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a lot of random things like that you can't prepare for.
Sure.
And you see it on the news every day, and you
And the
become
news
numb
wants to
to it.
sensationalize each one.
Yeah.
And you reach a point where you are numb.
Yeah. So we haven't been watching the news for a long time. I mean, we check our phones occasionally, the news. We kind of have a headline version of what's
Of the world.
going on.
Yeah.
But definitely not the depth and repetition of it that you get when you're actually in the U.S.
Yeah.
So I think maybe there's a tiny bit of apprehension of that, but not really, because we're Americans and we're used to it. But no, we don't. On the flip side of that, do you feel so safe coming home to the U.S.? No.
No.
I don't feel that either. I feel like we've been safe.
Mm-hmm.
We have chosen not to go dangerous places.
Well, and we'll choose that again in the U.S., but that's
Yeah.
just, these are choices that you make oftentimes to where you put yourself.
Mm-hmm. And this kind of leads into the next thing, is that I fear believing I don't know what you want to call it. You can call it propaganda. You can call it media influence. You can just call it cultural generalized beliefs, whatever you want to call it. But in the U.S., we have certain ideas about other countries. And some of it's based on politics or previous wars or even immigrants or stories that we get, mostly stories we get fed all the time in the news, and even like movies that are made and the way they're filmed and the way people are portrayed or countries are portrayed, all of that. And I became very aware of this way back in 1985 when I went to the Soviet Union for a week on a tour of Europe and realized, wow, there's a lot of propaganda in the U.S. as well. Of course, there is all over the world. Every country.
Wait, the U.S. has propaganda?
Every country does. I love the U.S. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying.
We all have our spin.
Yeah. Every country has its own spin on everything that has happened. We'll just call it spin. And I realized that the Soviet Union was not all gray and black and white and sad, and ugly. You know,
1980s TV would show us.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. So I realized that then. But now, traveling around.
Yeah. Now, as we travel around, I mean, we've been in Southeast Asia for the last 5-6 months. God, I forgot how long.
7 months.
Forgot how long we've been there. And, there is a beauty to it. And the people are incredibly nice. Yeah. And everything that we experienced was just a great outlook for Southeast Asia.
Yeah, and I think that especially with Vietnam, because of the Vietnamese War, that we were taught that it's dirty, it's dangerous, it's full of communists, and it's
well, it's full of communists. It's a communist country.
Right, but it also is full of capitalism.
It really is.
A big surprise. It's ruled with an iron hand. It didn't ever have that feeling,
No.
And that it's dangerous and it's filthy, dirty, and it's dirt poor. None of that is true in a general sense. Of course, there's areas,
pockets of it.
But what I'm saying is the overall impression of it is not at all. We were shocked when we got there, and we're like, this is so nice and more modern than we expected. And just everything about it was different than we expected based on what we'd been fed, I guess.
And to really bring this point home, we're on a cruise ship and we saw a comedian. He's an Ethiopian guy from Australia, and he was talking about coming to the U.S. and going to Hollywood and how it was, portrayed as, this glitz, glamour, great, expensive place, rich people live there. All I could see was homeless people everywhere.
Yeah, well.
But that's not what his impression of it was going there.
Right, exactly. And, we're from California. We know. We know what Hollywood looks like. Yeah, but it's not like you see in the movies. No. And the other thing is, like, all the Europeans that we meet that are like, oh yeah, Cuba is a major tourist destination for Europeans. We go there. They go there the way Americans go to, say, like St. Thomas or something in the Caribbean, right? They go to Cuba. Like, oh yeah, Cuba's beautiful. It's wonderful. I mean, I thought from the U.S. that if you go to Cuba, for one thing, there's going to be these weird noises in your ears that are going to leave you damaged forever in the hotels, because that's all you see in the news. And it's very dangerous and it's gross. And instead, they have beautiful beaches and resorts, and it's like going to any island paradise. However, a lot of Europeans that visit Cuba then cannot get a visa into the U.S.
At least the ones we've talked to say it was difficult.
Very interesting how difficult it is to get visas into the U.S. if you've been in certain countries in the world. Yeah. So that was an eye-opening thing.
What's another fear we got?
Oh, driving. I haven't driven in a year.
I have, on the wrong side of the road.
Yeah. I mean, just like we were afraid to drive in Australia.
Yeah, there's a little apprehension coming home.
Scary to drive. Plus, we're used to countries where nobody follows any kind of traffic laws whatsoever. Yeah. How are you going to make yourself stop at the intersections?
I'm trying to think. I don't actually believe I saw any type of police in New Zealand when I drove there. I know they have them, but I don't think I actually saw any.
How is this relevant?
Because I'm going to be driving in the U.S. and I know Highway Patrol are looking for people.
Oh, you're out of practice.
I'm out of practice.
For the cops. Okay. So let's see. That was one. What's another one? What fear do you have?
I think the biggest fear for me, honestly, is just getting into the whole pricing game of the U.S. and how much stuff costs. And how to keep a handle on the budget I have. I think that's my biggest concern.
We have never been able to live in the U.S. for $4,000 a month. Not even when we were like really young and we didn't expect anything of life.
Yeah. So that's probably my biggest fear, is getting that under control and keeping it under control.
Yeah, the money is terrifying about the U.S.
What are you excited about?
That's not what this video is about.
Okay, never mind.
Well, I'll tell you how it ties in. I'm excited about the food. Unfortunately, food costs money.
Which ties into the budget and keeping it under control.
And I do want to eat out all my favorite places. But I also am a little bit afraid that I'm going to be let down by it, because now, after craving it for so long, it's kind of like ranch dressing. The rest of the world doesn't really have ranch dressing, and I've been craving it, even though I wasn't like a huge ranch dressing person. But now we're on the ship and they do have ranch dressing, and it was really great the first time I ate it, and then now
it's ranch dressing.
Didn't it used to taste better?
Nope. Tastes the same.
A couple things like that. I've tasted them now, things I've been craving, and I'm like, didn't this used to taste better like before? Because I've built it up too high in my mind. So we'll see if that happens with Mexican food. I don't know if that's possible, but it could be. Okay, so time to get into some of the little harder ones.
Okay,
so one fear we have is, well, it's two fears that are kind of opposite of each other but connected. Like the fear that we will not want to leave again. Like we'll get there, we'll feel just this comforting feeling of being in what is familiar, being around our family, and it'll just make it really, really hard to leave. Like we won't want to leave.
Right. And then we also have the fear that we'll get into a situation where we can't leave.
Where we feel like we can't leave. Like, what if something happens to, someone in our family or whatever, we feel like they need us, and then the need just keeps going, or someone's just begging us not to leave. I don't know, little grandbaby or whatever. And
now we're diving into the hypotheticals, but these are the thoughts that I think that run through your mind
A lot.
A lot that you think about as a nomad and going home.
And what are you going to do? Because it's one thing when you're letting your kids down from across the world, and it's another thing when you're doing it to their face.
And, you know, when you're on the road, you have this mindset that if my family needs me, I will drop what I'm doing and go straight home. But you also do that with the thought and the intention that you're going to work through the crisis and then get back on the road.
So we actually did have this happen. So our son, our youngest, TJ, he got really sick. They thought he had a throat abscess and was going to have surgery. And he goes to college in New York, so technically he's alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
No one else in the family could go. I called a couple kids. Nobody could just drop everything and fly to New York. And so, sorry, my hair is really bugging me. So, you know, we're on the phone with him and he's saying, you know, they sent me to the hospital. And, you know, we're like 20-hour plane ride away, knowing we're not going to make it there in time anyways.
Mm-hmm.
But that's my baby, right? And we're like, we can come. Do you want us to come? We'll get on the next plane we can find. And he's like, no, Maddie's here. That's his girlfriend. And we'll be okay. And I'm like, are you sure you don't need your mommy?
Nope.
Which, ironically, he went through knee surgery without us when we lived in California. And he was in New York, and he's like, I will be fine. Don't worry about it. My coach is going to take me, and or my trainer. Anyways, so he's pretty resilient. But those are the kinds of things that when those happen, as a parent, you want to go be with your child. And so what if that happens and we're already there? And then it becomes like an ongoing thing.
A gremlin in our heads that we must chase away.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing we fear. I think also because we've heard from other nomads, this is where y'all messed us up. No, I'm just kidding.
You got in our heads.
That sometimes, as tolerant as your family has been about you being gone, when you get home, they have a lot to say about it.
We're a little nervous about that. We have 5 children. That's a lot to say.
and that ups the odds that somebody's going to let loose. And we want them to be free to. And
yes,
we do.
And that's perfectly okay for them to do that.
And we ask them a lot, like, how is this affecting you? Are you okay with this? And
the answers vary.
They do. And they try to be really nice about it, but there's still things that we feared would affect them, and in some ways they do. And so, you know, we feel really bad about that, and how does that affect our future choices?
Mm-hmm.
And
well, I think it already has. We've already decided on the road we're going to try to circle back to the States more frequently.
And this trip will really decide how possible that is financially.
Right.
Because there's a lot of expenses with the logistics of seeing kids that are spread all over the country. So I'm afraid of somebody really letting loose on us. But I also want them to have the freedom to do that if that's what they need to do. And I'd rather just talk it through with them, and I hope that they will be honest and talk it through with us.
Yeah, I think they will.
But yeah, I also fear that they don't say what they're feeling. And they bottle it up and they just have resentment or whatever. I worry about those things too. Yeah. So,
you know what else we really fear? I'm just going to really kind of take a left turn.
What?
We fear the IRS.
Oh, that's a fact.
So, last year's tax return has been held up.
Still, this is almost a year later and we have not gotten our refund.
Yes.
We have gotten letters ranging from we're reviewing your form to we lost everything. But we can access it in their system, so they should be able to.
So we actually have a meeting set up with the IRS.
I'm
and
afraid.
So, a little afraid of that.
That's always Pandora's box, right?
Yeah, the IRS has never been my friend.
And you need help, so you go in and you ask them, and then they don't want to admit their mistake, so instead they just go, now we're going to audit the last 10 years of your return.
Again,
who knows?
Fear.
Terror.
General fear of the IRS.
Yeah, that. So another fear is that you kind of get back into the mode of the U.S. way of thinking. Like, we don't want to get back into that rat race mentality and go, wow, it's so expensive here, so it's eating up our budget. So maybe we should just Tim can travel.
Maybe we should stay and Tim should work. Why is Tim working more?
Because Tim can do travel therapy, right? Like 3 months at a time. So it's not like a huge commitment. We can easily drift into this little, maybe Tim should just work for 3 months and then we'd have more money.
No.
I don't like the idea either. I'm not suggesting it. I'm saying, I know you, and right now you're saying that, but we'll get back there and you'll be like, it's cost so much money here. Why don't I just work for 3 months? We'll recoup and then we'll go.
No.
Hopefully not. I do fear drifting into our old selves.
Yeah, our old personalities. And, when you've been on the road for this long and you've been living in close quarters like this for this long, you develop, I don't want to say a new relationship, but you do really fine tune the way you communicate and
make it much better.
Yeah. And when you get back to the U.S. rat race, there's some fears of old personalities and styles of communication popping back in.
It's already happening. I don't know what it is, but like from Singapore and this kind of realization that we are going home and being around our son, I think like it puts you into the past and present at the same time, And so I think we've been struggling on this cruise, to be honest. Like our relationship has not been as good as before and as safe feeling as before. Like, like more judgment, I guess, and misunderstandings. Of course, it's always been me. It's just me. It's all in my head. Tim barely exists in this relationship.
Anyway,
so
these are the types of things that run through your mind as you
fall into old patterns. Is what I'm saying. It's not an old personality. It's still our personality, but old patterns are bad.
Old coping mechanisms.
Yeah, they belong to a different life and not this life. And things have been so much better. And then just as we head home, they start drifting backwards. And it's like, oh no, we don't want to lose the ground that we've gained.
And so you want to just put the brakes on everything.
Yeah.
Just pump those brakes and say, wait a minute.
Yeah. And I think too, just being around our son, even though we had a fantastic and positive time with him, it brings up that mom part of me that I haven't been that much for the past year. I mean, I am on phone calls and what have you, but I don't live in that mom zone of expectations from my children, as much. I mean, a little bit, especially when I'm on the phone, but I'm able to walk away from that again, where when we go back to the U.S., I'm going to really be in the mom zone and, in fact, the grandma zone, which I haven't really been in before because we really only had one grandchild before that who most of the time never lived near us. Right. So, I don't even know what that role is and what those expectations are. And if there's one thing in the world I hate, it is expectations. Like, I don't do well with expectations, and so I'm feeling like the weight of expectations coming back on me, and I'm very afraid of that. I'm not as much afraid of the expectations as what they do to me on the inside. Like feeling like a failure all the time. So anyways, what other fears do we have? Anything else? We are going to have a video coming up on how we've changed, because we have changed a lot over the last 15 months, I think.
Yeah.
And so we're going to do a video on that because I think these are interesting things that we did not realize as nomads before.
And I think the things that we honestly did not expect to have happen.
It's been a lot more of an emotional journey than a travel journey in a lot of ways.
We've covered a lot of miles, girl.
Yeah, but the travel changes who you are on the inside, as it always does. That's the point of travel, is to change you. And it has changed us even more than previous travel had changed us. And I think just being together 24/7 all the time has changed us.
Yeah, I had a lot of friends when I talked to them about doing this initially. They were like, are you sure you can be around someone 24/7? I mean, think about being in a cabin of a ship 24/7 for 25 days.
Right. And then multiply that
times 15 months.
Yeah.
And you know what? It truly has been a blessing and an incredible experience.
Yeah. I think that's been the best part of all of this.
Yeah.
But it definitely has changed us, and it has changed our relationship. And I think just being out of the U.S. and getting a super different perspective without dipping in and out and in and out has really been a positive thing also. And being around, honestly, the influence of other travelers has really been impactful.
Really has been. And the wisdom that they impart, when you talk to people and everybody gives you a nugget and you hold on to that nugget and you really grow from it. Now, imagine everyone you meet is someone new, someone experienced, someone who's experienced more in the world of travel than you have.
Yeah.
And the amount of nuggets now that we carry.
Oh yeah, it's humbling and inspiring, and I'm talking about nomads, but also mostly just all the different travelers from around the world that we meet.
Yeah, they're not even nomads,
as
but
we go our way.
Yeah,
and
they get
the
month-long vacations.
Yeah, the way that they see the world and the places they've been, and so all that has been super cool and super inspiring, and we'll share more of that with you on the next video.
Yeah.
And so just a couple things. If you haven't seen Daily Taste yet, you can go back and watch the whole playlist. We'll link it.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah, there are a lot of them. There's like 54, I think.
Okay.
But Daily Taste has basically moved over to our Cruise Through Retirement channel for a while. And so if you want to follow us on this journey, on this
panorama
this
voyage
ship for a month, and see what it's like to live on a ship for a month with somebody in a little tiny inside cabin, you can follow us there, and we'll link to that. I also wrote a blog.
I heard sarcasm.
I also write a blog occasionally, every couple months. But if you've never checked out our website, tastelifewithus.com, go check it out. On the blog page, I wrote a blog on kind of this topic, not really the fears, but just the journey home and what that feels like. So yeah, if you want to read that, my blog is not a travel blog, it's a heart blog of a nomad heart. This nomad heart, we're all different.
What she's saying is I don't have a heart, but that's okay. Thank you guys so much for tasting life with us.
Yes, now go taste life for yourself.